what does that look like on the streets of Tel Aviv, where the majority of the African refugee population lives? It looks like graffiti. Expel the N-word. It looks like firebombing the homes of African refugees and even firebombing an African nursery in Tel Aviv. And I suppose they didn't report that in Philadelphia papers either. This is our reality. Now, of course, again, there are Jewish folks in Israel and elsewhere that are disgusted by this treatment of African refugees, and people who, as soon as that nursery was firebombed, they went out into the streets and protested against them and spoke out against this racism. But the problem is that they are a minority, a small minority, and that they're overwhelmed by a massive majority of folks who want the Africans gone. The quicker the better. So, May 23rd, 2012, the Tel Aviv anti-African pogrom. 1,000 Israeli Jews run rampant through the streets of Tel Aviv, attacking every African person they come across, smashing African shops, cafes. And why did they do such a thing? What triggered them? It was because Israeli members of Knesset and ministers stood on the podium in South Tel Aviv and incited against African refugees, with Miri Regev, the top female official in the ruling Likud party. She says, the Sudanese are a cancer in our body. And in that word, she sent off these pogromists to do their dirty work. Now, I should admit that Miri Regev did apologize for what she'd said. She said, I apologize. The problem is, she then explained, I apologize, I did not intend to hurt cancer patients.
What?
Sad that she compared Israeli cancer victims to Africans, not the Africans to cancer. This is how disgusting it gets. And what's the response of the organization that says that it's a Jewish civil rights organization? The ADL, the Anti-Defamation League. How did they respond to this pogrom? I mean, aren't they supposed to be an anti-racist organization? You'd think so, huh? Well, this is what Abe Foxman had to say about it. Among other things, that he sympathizes with Israeli citizens whose personal security has been compromised by the lawlessness engendered by these African refugees. And he praised Netanyahu, commended him for his commitment to resolving this crisis responsibly. That's the ADL's statement on this pogrom. Of course, this is hysterical. What a joke. Thank you for doing our dirty work. Thanks to you for doing our hasbara. So, of course, Netanyahu and Regev have a good time of it. If you can imagine, this was Netanyahu's leadership on this. How did he respond to the pogrom? He appointed that woman to be Miri Regev, then became the chair. He appointed her to be the chair of the Interior Committee, the very committee that determines the fate of African refugees. So he put the pogromist in charge of the victims. Now, of course, since she's been moving up the ranks and into government, they need someone else to fill her space, another young ultra-racist. So Netanyahu has now tapped this woman to fill her slot. This is Mai Golan. Who's Mai Golan? Well, he's already ensuring that she's been well-funded by Kenneth Abramowitz, the head of Likud USA, okay, Netanyahu's political party's largest fundraiser in the United States. He's now not only funding Netanyahu, he's funding Mai Golan. Who's Mai Golan? Well, she's already been politically active for several years. How did she cut her teeth in the Israeli political system? She's been groomed for power by, who is this man that's speaking on her behalf? Who is Mai Golan, and who is the man, Ben-Ari, who's sponsoring her rise to power? This man, Ben-Ari, is the head of the Kahanist movement in Israel. That's her political patron. Meir Kahane, one and the same. Now, for those who aren't familiar with the backstory, this is basically the founding father of Israeli fascism. Okay? Too many details to go into, but basically this is the furthest right-wing party in Israel. And now Netanyahu is bringing them into the government, if you can imagine that. So it's not only, this is at the memorial service, the annual memorial that celebrates Meir Kahane, the man who made it popular to call for ethnic cleansing, who made it no longer a badge of shame to call for eliminating non-Jews from the country. So not only does he praise Kahane at his annual memorial service, but Mai Golan does so as well. This is who Netanyahu has made. This Kahanist is now the youth representative of the Likud party. She has gotten the slot on the Likud list, and once elections occur in just 2 weeks' time, she's going to be elected to the Knesset. This is now another member of parliament. Someone who I have personally filmed in downtown Tel Aviv leading anti-African rallies, screaming, "I am proud to be a racist." Screaming, "May you be raped in your grave." Yes. Poetic. Well, what do you expect? With this level of incitement, it has a result. It doesn't exist in a vacuum. And so what happens in the years that follow? We see an Eritrean refugee family on the streets of downtown Tel Aviv, father, mother, 2 young daughters, and this 1-year-old baby girl. An Israeli Jewish man walks up to the family and stabs the baby in the head 3 times. Thankfully, she survived, not without damage, of course. She did manage to pull through. Now, and again, I don't mean to suggest that this is like commonplace, that people are slaughtering African people in the streets willy-nilly. Obviously, anyone who stabs a little baby, a 1-year-old baby, is psychotic under any measure, right? We can't say that all Israeli, nothing even remotely close to that. But the issue is, why did this psycho stab a black baby? Why did he choose an African refugee family to attack? And he explained his reasoning, even though the police at first said, "Oh, no, there's nothing to do with racism." Yeah, okay. Once they interrogated him, he explained it in detail. He said, quote, "I tried to kill her because I hate them. They're black. A black baby, blacks in general, are terrorists." Well, she wasn't the last victim. The following year, this man, another refugee from Eritrea, Haftum Zarhum, he was lynched in the Beersheba Central Bus Station. This man, Babakir, he was a refugee from Sudan, and he was lynched in downtown Petah Tikva. Petah Tikva is a suburb of Tel Aviv. He was lynched right in front of Petah Tikva City Hall, beaten to death, just like Emmett Till, because he spoke to some white girls, some Israeli teenagers. He just walked by and blah, 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 exchanged a few words with them. The reason we know this is because it's all on CCTV. It was right outside the city hall. So there's evidence. So you see, he walks over to them, talks to them, and then walks away after 10 seconds, posing no threat whatsoever. Seconds later, a group of Israeli youth jump on him and pummel him and beat him for an hour and a half right outside City Hall for daring to speak to Jewish girls. So how did they even know it was him? Just like Emmett Till, they crushed his face. He was unrecognizable, even to his own brother afterwards. The only way they were able to recognize him is because since he was a refugee from Darfur and he'd escaped the ethnic cleansing there, he had lost some of his fingers in the fighting. And so because he lacked some fingers on his hand, his brother only that way was able to recognize him. That's how badly he was pummeled.